Good afternoon and welcome to the Hyper Japan LGBT plus Japan panel. We're very pleased for you to join us today. We're going to do something a little bit different from the regular Hyper Japan content and introduce some speakers to guide us through issues and all the information about LGBT Japan in 2021. I would like to now hand over to our moderator, Bill Reilly, and he will take us through this panel.
And art performances here in Tokyo. So if you're interested and you're traveling or living, definitely do check us out. But I am not the most important person here today. I have a bunch of fun guests that I would like to introduce you all to today. So our first guest, her name is Erica Friedman, and they hold a master's degree in library science. I know, it's very exciting. And she also holds a degree in comparative literature, and she's a full-time researcher at a Fortune 100 company. Not 500, because 500, that's not fun. Fortune
Totally
100
uncool
is
at
where
this
it's
point.
at.
Yeah, no.
Totally uncool. No. They have lectured at dozens of conventions and presented at film festivals all around. And they have ultimately written about Yuri, interviewed Yuri creators, and reviewed Yuri anime, manga, and related media on their blog Okazu since 2002. Okay, that's 19 years of amazing work. So hello, Erica.
Hello, Bill. It's so wonderful to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Before I introduce the others, though, I used the word Yuri about 3 times. And, maybe not everyone understands what Yuri is. Give us a quick definition for the word
The
Yuri. What
super
does that mean?
quick. So basically, there's two definitions. Yuricon, which is my organization, we define it as any anime or manga out of Japan that has lesbian themes or characters, or even has like intense emotional relationships between women. So we have this like broad umbrella of Yuri manga and Yuri anime. And for myself on my blog, my personal definition is it's lesbian content without lesbian identity.
Oh, I love it. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now, in Japan right now, there's the shoryakugo, or like the abbreviation BL
Right,
for the genre boys love. Is
right.
there an abbreviation for Yuri?
Yuri is the abbreviation, and that's like actually
Oh,
been a 20-year evolution. We
okay.
actually had an event in 2005 where a lot of Yuri manga all sat around. We all decided we were going to use this word because it was coined in the 70s and it had connections to the lesbian community. Then, so Barozoku was the magazine, Ito Bungaku-san's magazine. And so he had coined Yurizoku for the Lily tribe. And when I started getting into Yuri 20 years ago, 30 years ago, we didn't really have a word for it. And there was like 1,000 different words for it. And at the time, we all kind of decided to bring back that ties and that history and sort of reclaim the word because it had gotten kind of like, Yuri equals porn kind of thing. So now it's Yuri, and while the publishers in Japan really desperately want it to be GL, we kind of won't let them. But they still use it because language is fluid and everything changes and it's fine. What we'll
Yes.
call it in 20 years, who knows?
Awesome. Thank you so much. Erica, please keep fighting the marketing man. We appreciate it. So next up, we have Masaki Matsumoto. And Masaki, you are a Japan-based, for now, queer writer, speaker, and YouTuber who creates, stuff mostly about and against the heteropatriarchy on YouTube. And I'm very much here for it. Hello, Masaki. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you for having me today.
Absolutely. Masaki, can you tell us a little bit about your own words real quick?
Sure.
Sure.
I
I
am.
am.
I'm still figuring
I'm
out
still figuring out
my
my
sexual
like
orientation
orientation
and
and
stuff like that.
even
Even like
gender
gender
identity.
identity.
I've been
Trying
trying
to
to
find
find
my
my
identity.
identity.
I've been doing that for like 30
6 years
now.
now.
So, so
So
yeah.
yeah,
That's
that
the
the
sexuality
sexuality
and
and
gender
gender
identity. Those are the things that I usually talk about on YouTube and on Twitter and in my writings. My Most of my writings are in Japanese, but yeah. So if anyone in the audience reads Japanese, check out my Twitter. I have a Japanese Twitter. So, and I like Bill said, I am a writer and a YouTuber and speaker, but I also own a bar business here in Tatebayashi, Gunma, and it's a queer, inclusive, minority-friendly space for all different kinds of community, which is rare to find in places like this. So if you're located in in places near Goomba or if you are willing to take time and money and energy to come all the way to Gunma, everyone is welcome.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Masaki. So if anyone ever finds themselves with a car broken down on the side of the highway in a prefecture you don't want to be in, please definitely visit Masaki at their bar.
Yeah, I have a friend who is a car who can fix cars, so
Perfect.
I'll refer you to them.
So next up, I would love to introduce you all to Ronald Taylor. Ronald is a writer and podcaster for Arama Japan, and he also writes for the Japan Times on Japanese entertainment, mostly music and also pop culture. And he has, very, very often been described as the Perez Hilton of J-pop. Ronald, please give us your best Perez Hilton impersonation. Go.
Oh God. The other things that people come up with recently was like Nostradamus, because 6 years ago I said that Misha would be at the Olympics, and I was right.
Yes.
And then someone also said Azealia Banks of J-pop, which okay. It's like, I'll take those. Thank you.
Oh my gosh. Ronald, did you also predict the horrible pictogram mishap of the Olympics, or was that just, natural destiny?
I didn't predict that. No.
Okay.
That just
Sorry,
happened.
please tell us a little bit about yourself.
You basically said everything. Yeah, so like there's a site Arama Japan that I work for, and like we write about just like Japanese pop culture, and then we also have a podcast, and then sprouting off of that, I started doing the Japan Times, writing mainly about music. So yeah.
Awesome. Please tell us the one artist that we should be listening to right now, but we are not.
God.
Only one.
Only one. My personal favorite probably be Mukai Taichi. He's a male singer-songwriter who I like.
Okay, cool. Thank you for the simple, one-worded answer. I'm sure that is guiding you to the depth of your heart very much right now, but thank you very much for keeping it short. Thank you, Ronald. And I would like to introduce, last but not least, Miss Madame Wasabi. She is a Japanese drag queen, singer, and stage performer based in France. They started performing in drag in Paris back in 2017, and their name is inspired by the Japanese horseradish used in sushi. Obviously, I think. On the stage, she sings Japanese songs, which are known as Showa Kayo, and French songs, which in French are called chansons. Hello, madam. How are you? I think, madam, you are muted, or maybe your mic is not plugged in. Yoroshiku onegai shimasu. We are still hearing 100% silence from you, but you look great. And honestly, that's most important, right?
Okay. Oh yeah. How about you?
Got you. We got
Yes.
you. Hi, madam. How are you doing?
Hello, everyone. Sorry, I had a problem about the microphone.
No worries, no worries.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. How are things doing in the drag community right now in Paris?
In Paris, actually, the lockdown is over. If you have the what's the name? The note, the document. It says you're negative. You can go anywhere.
Mm.
Hmm.
So everyone walks around with their little card, like, I'm cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
That sounds very non-problematic.
I'm so happy to see you.
Happy to
It's
see
been a
you
long
too.
time.
Nice to have you. So like to start off today, everyone, I thought it would be kind of fun to do a quick round of one-word answers. And this is a question that I kind of always tell people when they are visiting Japan, because I think it's kind of interesting. In Japan, we have a special lingo like any other country of kind of queer slang or like queer no senmon yogo という言葉がいっぱいあると思いますので、I would love to ask everyone's favorite queer slang that they use often, or that when they hear it, they're like, oh, fuck. Or when they hear it, they're just like, oh, that tickles me because the reasons are so stupid. So I'd like to just hear, what is your favorite queer yogo? Does anyone have one that they love? I'd like to start off with Masaki. Onegaishimasu.
It's very hard.
There's many.
There's one word that I just recently learned. Autocorrect sexual.
Uh-huh.
Does anyone have any idea what it means?
Say it's
Autocorrect sexual.
Auditory sexual?
Oh, no. Auto, like automatic. Autocorrect sexual.
Otokori sexual. 聞いたことない。
Auto means yourself, right?
Uh-huh.
And Corey, I guess it means, I guess it means, wait, are we talking about Japanese queer lingo?
Well, that would be great, but if it's a new word that you love, go for it.
Okay. So Corey, that Corey part, it means like absent.
Mm-hmm.
So like,
really, it just does it for you. It's your number one thing, but maybe you would never ever want to do it yourself. But you just really want to enjoy other people doing that activity, which we're not going to talk about today. At all. No. So let's move over to Ronald. What's your favorite queer yogo?
Oh God. I don't know. I think well, one word that pops up a lot that like me and my friends say a lot would be just like the word girl.
Okay, like gyaru?
Yeah. Well, not like, I guess because like not really like as far as like, because supposed to be English or supposed to be like Japanese.
Japanese.
Hmm.
Everyone's given me English answers so far.
Because I was just like, I don't really use a Japanese one. So yeah, I guess it'll probably just be like girl, just like, because like it can mean like many different things. The way intonation.
Okay, let's go through a quick little activity, Ronald, shall we? You can only respond with the word girl. Are you ready?
Okay.
Okay, here we go. Situation number 1. Did you see Veronica's new shoes? There we go.
Yeah.
That's a very good use of it. Thank you,
There
Ronald.
it is.
じゃあ、わさびさんに行こうと思いますので、Wasabi, tell us about your favorite queer Japanese word.
タチとバイ受け I don't know if you guys know. Do you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Please explain for the audience if they don't already know those
I don't
words.
know. In English, it's very hard. You can do that bit.
Well, tachi and uke are probably the
Both
Japanese
of them.
terms for top and bottom. Tachi being top and uke
Mhm.
being ukeru or to receive. What about body? What is the
Does it
significance, the
come from
nuance of
like
body?
body? I think
Oh, the
it's super.
body, the magazine, or
No, it's
physical body.
no, it's
I
like
think it means like extreme.
Oh, okay.
extreme. Exactly. Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, extreme in.
Mm-mm-mm.
So when you're saying like I'm
So,
body
like-
uke, that means like you're like extremely a
Bottom.
bottom.
Super body.
Like a power
like a
bottom.
super bottom.
Right.
The power bomb.
I think like because we also have in katakana we have pawa botomu, and so that's a little bit of a different nuance from
it
bariuke,
different?
I think.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, because like Sure. Oh, okay. We are touching some sensitive topics today.
Okay, so
How
Erica
about
doesn't do
Erica?
Chris
Please
slang
tell
at
us about
all.
your
I
favorite
only
word.
do otaku slang. So, and otaku slang changes in completely different ways because it changed the teenagers really quickly, and so by the time we even get it here in the U.S., it's so old, and they're rolling their eyes. In America, I'm still teaching people how to say yaoi correctly because they were yaoi, and it drives me batshit. So I don't really have any queer slang. I don't even have U.S. queer slang. I'm like the least. I'm just totally useless at that stuff. So
No
step out of
problem. No
that.
problem. Okay, leave meeting. Okay, thank you and goodbye. Thank you very
Bye,
much,
have a
Erica. No
lovely
worries
day.
at all. So I'd like to throw a question out to the group as a whole, just to get things started. Since we're all spending a lot of time at home recently, obviously we're all connecting online, I would love to hear your opinions about this question. Do you think that overseas media, like things that you find on Netflix or YouTube, may possibly influence LGBT perceptions in Japan? Do you think that they affect how things are seen in Japan? Do you think that they affect how Japanese people see representations in the LGBT culture in Japan? So the question is once more, how do you think that online media like Netflix or YouTube is maybe affecting Japanese LGBT culture or reputation or representation as a whole? Please take it away, anyone who would like.
Okay, so I'm going to jump in, which is totally inappropriate, but there was a movie this past year on Netflix and Netflix Japan called Ride or Die, and it was based on a manga which I have sitting right here. It's called Winjo by Nakamura Ching, and this is one volume of 3, and Nakamura Sensei is out and proud, and she wrote this. It's an amazing story about abuse and about violence, and this character basically has had a horrible, desperate life, and she asks a lesbian who has been in love with her since high school to kill her abusive husband for her, and then the story starts. It starts with after the murder, and the movie just came out. It's called Ride or Die, and it's not the manga, but it's based on the manga. And Nakamura Sensei and I had a conversation about that, and she was saying, that the story is meant to highlight domestic abuse and domestic violence, but that the press, the media in Japan, was not super supportive of that message at all. And so I thought that was interesting, but I don't know if globally, like bigger than one person or another person that you have a lot of effect, but I do know from experience that individually, media representation does have an absolute effect where somebody turns on the TV and goes, whoa, I did not realize that was my story. And I can't tell you from years of listening to people online, talking to people all over the world, that things like this story, somebody out there did not realize they were in an abusive relationship until they watched that and thought, oh my God, that could be my story. So I do think it has an effect. I don't know if it has an effect in a big sense, but definitely on an individual level it can.
That's an interesting point you just brought up. The fact that they didn't realize they were in an abusive relationship until they saw it illustrated in a different sense in front of their eyes.
Yeah,
And I
I
think
know
that's
people who have had
quite a
that
common
exact
theme.
experience where they were. I had a friend who was listening to the radio, and the person was going on about this being happening, and they're like, "No, but you don't understand," and they found themselves defending their bad behavior, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, she changed her life like right away at that moment."
Interesting. Thank you.
Something about that movie, though, that you actually just mentioned is that there was an NBC article that came out about the movie when it was first released.
Mhm.
And it actually served as a way of one of the actresses in the movie to actually announce that she has had relationships with women in the past.
Yes.
Kiko Mizuhara.
Mhm. Mhm.
So it was just like, that's an interesting thing that was unexpected. Because they were just like, well, how did it feel playing a lesbian? And she was just like, I didn't really think of it as anything different than my regular life because I've been with women in the past.
Right. So it had a lot of effect, even in like an immediate effect. Yeah. Yeah. Also, it's an excellent movie. You should watch it.
Thanks. We'll give it a shot. Ride or Die on
Ride or
Netflix.
Die. Yeah.
Okay, got it. How about yourselves, Wasabi or Masaki? Have you ever seen yourselves represented in media and felt either that you discovered something or that, oh, they're getting this completely wrong. In actuality, it's blah, 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 blah. Like, have you ever had that experience?
Yeah, of course, for me, like on Netflix, RuPaul Drag Race. It's about drag queen, and like there's so many variety of queens, and then like there's a moment that I cried because like I saw some queens that they feel exactly same what I felt. Like to love yourself, for example. So like I love the show and other TV shows on Netflix. Now you can see so many LGBTQ like movies and TV shows and the makeup, blah blah blah. And like I love it. I'm lucky to live in 2021. I feel that.
That's very true. I think a lot of us can say that, but at the same time, a lot of us can complain about it as well for very, very valid reasons.
Of course, of course.
How about yourself, Masaki? How do you feel about media and LGBT representation in Japan?
Well, if I'm going to talk about media representation and myself, I have to start with boys love, yaoi, BL, because that's the genre that I found as a teenager. And at that time, that was the only media representation that was mostly positive about same-sex relationships and same-sex sexual, gay sexuality or bisexuality. So like, starting from that, I was able to sort of come to terms with my sexuality, where I am attracted to boys as well. I am bisexual, by the way, but I was actually having a very positive image of my future self because of like reading too much BL. I'm like, oh my god, I am going to be like this. I was a junior high school.
Just a quick correction, Masaki. There is no such thing as too much BL. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry,
you can never have too much BL.
Never have too.
But yeah, yeah, I was a junior high student, and I was like, oh, when I get to high school, I'm gonna be like, in a relationship with this kind of like, like super masculine, well, it's not super masculine in ways that like we imagine like gay people now, but like super cool, kind of like a Yankee kind of person. Like I'm the like a study kind of person. So like, I'm going to be the president of the student council, and then I'm going to be seduced by this like really cool guy with the blonde hair. That was that was my yeah, that was what I was what I thought I would be like. But then
I
my
totally understand like the
yeah.
image of like the Kyushu danshi ikemen like rugby部の方がやってきて、おお、やば。
Yeah,
はい。
yeah. And then like my fantasy was basically crushed when I first saw the gay magazine Buddy when I was like 17. I'm like, I was instantly homophobic back then. I'm like, oh my god, this is not gonna. I'm not gonna be like this. But then, so yeah, um, even as young as I was back then, I was having a problem with media representations. Like BL, oh, it's me. It wasn't me, but I'm like, that's gonna be me. But on the other hand, looking
It
at
could be
these,
aspirational.
yeah,
I mean, that's part of representation right there is aspirational. I want
yeah.
to grow up and be Lady Oscar. Of course, we all want to be Lady Oscar. Like everybody wants to be Lady Oscar, but
Yeah, yeah.
you
So
know,
yeah, BL as a genre had a really positive influence on my like mental health and like in general like accepting myself and stuff like that. But then now, since I have already accepted myself, since I've already like accepted the idea that I am going to be who I am, whatever I will be next year. But so now that I'm like okay with myself, like being who I am, and also like changing in the future. Like I'm like I don't really care. So like I don't really need to watch or read content that is like queer positive. So like I basically stay away from any like TV drama series or any movies that are like popular at the moment because I will most likely hate it.
So you're a pure hipster. Okay.
And I know that a lot of people, especially when the TV series or movie is popular, a lot of people will say, "I watched this movie, I loved it." And like, if I have watched it and have a like a negative feeling about it, I don't want to discuss it, especially with my customers at my bar. They are paying me money, so I don't want to contradict their opinions. So I stay away from anything queer related on TV or in theater, and I maybe like after a year or two, I go back to it, and sometimes I'm like, oh my god, this is so good, but a lot of times,
and then you can't talk about it because you're too late.
Yeah, like no one's talking about it anymore. But yeah, but yeah, well, about that was like that was like my personal history.
Thank you.
Like my personal take on it, but at the same time about positive impacts that media can have on people. I think a lot of movies, a lot of like Netflix movies and the TV series from like Western countries, I think they have a positive impact on people, but mostly within the queer community. Because like like on YouTube and Netflix, there's this algorithm where like you open up the web page or like you launch you start up the Netflix app on TV. All these thumbnails are catered to you. So like I don't think the general public will necessarily find queer themed movies or TV series except only by accident.
it's
And
the
that's
bubble
yeah, that's a
algorithm.
good thing.
You create
But
your bubble, and so then your bubble gets populated with things that your bubble gets populated
yes,
with, and so
yes,
somebody's not looking for it. And I
yeah,
agree, but I also think that there's power in just seeing representation, knowing you're not alone in the world, and that gives people confidence to maybe
yeah,
come out, or more
absolutely.
importantly, seek other forms of media. And there's a lot of comic essays right now. There's a lot of nonfiction. There was an entire book last year, the year before, that was called Coming Out Essays. and it was all letters that adult queer people in Japan wrote to their families. It was a lovely book because it was people who had been trying to tell their families for years, and some of them had never managed to do it. And in the course of this thing, they got to write that letter to their mother or the father or the grandmother or whatever. And they found that a lot of them, the parents were like, we knew, but we really couldn't say it either because you couldn't say it. And so there's this weird, so this whole book really got people who hadn't been able to say things. And I'm sure that somebody read that book. And that's my big belief about representation. It's not about maybe this person or that person, but there's someone out there who needed that. And that was the thing that changed their lives. I'm really a big believer in that's why everybody who I know who's queer ought to be out. If they can be safe and out, they should be, so that they can be a role model for one other person out there saying, oh yeah, totally. When I started the Yuricon community, I came out and nobody was out around me at all. It was still back in the 90s. It was like, the bottom line is I'm going to do this and make sure that I'm always ahead of my community, being out and proud and whatever visible, so that people know that they're always safe here and they can come here and be themselves. And that's actually created a whole body of people doing that. And that's what I kind of think representation is really for. Any individual BL or beauty manga might not themselves be particularly realistic or very good, but maybe it was what somebody needed.
So if anyone is having trouble or feeling stressed in the New Jersey area, please feel free to go directly over to Erica's house. Her address is 552 Summers. I'm sorry, that'll be on the bottom of the screen after. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Rolf, how about yourself and media? Have you ever noticed any representation?
I'm sorry.
Representation of me personally, or just like Japanese media?
Yeah, about like foreign representation. We're talking like maybe like American Netflix accounts or American-based YouTube accounts. And how do you think that a different question, do you think it accurately represents the current situation of how things are going on in Japan?
That would be hard for me to answer as like a non-Japanese person. I don't want to put myself in the shoes, like kind of like silence their voices. I don't want to do that. But like during the lockdown, I did watch a Japanese movie called His. It came out the beginning of last year. And it was because like one of my friends was like, oh, that's a BL movie. And I was just like, do BL movies really deal with divorce and child custody? Because that would be kind of heavy for a BL, I think.
Well, I think there are different levels of BL, like the genre that Masaki spoke about earlier, where it's kind of like the ちょっとなんか可愛くってなんか壁ドンされてみたいなやつ. But then maybe there's also more like adult versions where you actually do, in this chapter, we pay the taxes, like that kind of a thing.
I also read like, BL stuff that was like, that had like deep themes as well.
Yeah.
Like with, stuff like violence and like sexual abuse from the father and stuff like that. So yeah. Yeah.
But there's Ototo no Oto by Takamiya Sensei, my brother's husband, which is a good story about representation. It's a 2-volume in English. It's 2 volumes in Japanese. It's 4 volumes. Actually, brought a bunch of things, good queer stuff to show. But that one is very much about that. It's like, what is it like when the people around you, if you ask them, they go, no, I've got nothing against gay people, but there's passive homophobia that they don't even realize they have absorbed. That's what this manga is about. It's about what happens when a person is forced to confront his own passive homophobia about his late twin brother. And how his life changes and how the people around him change because of it, and how they affect him. So that actually does deal with things like divorce and child custody and some stuff like that. And maybe in roundabout ways, not necessarily about the gay couple themselves, because the one gay male partner is passed
But
away.
is it accurate to call everything that's a depiction of gay men BL?
It's not a BL manga. It's
Yeah.
it's by Takamiya Sensei doesn't do
Yes.
the traditional BL.
Yeah,
He does
yeah.
mostly sort of
No.
chunky dudes, bears. But this is for mainstream manga magazines. So it was for this was specifically, and I'm showing this specifically because it was for straight people to read. Specifically, and there was a live action drama also. Fuji TV, I think, ran it as on demand. But basically, what it was specifically for straight people to read and go, I wonder if I treat my gay son or daughter like that. Like, is that the stuff that I've absorbed without really necessarily realizing that's the kind of person I've been? So,
And maybe
Because
from
because the representation is not just for gay people to see themselves, like queer people, LGBT people see themselves. It's also so that people who are straight can go and say, oh, I saw this on TV,
right.
and now this person at work, so I can treat them better.
Yeah, and that's
Not that that's the ideal
what this
situation, but like,
really is.
yeah.
It was really for straight adult men who never thought about themselves as being anything. Like, gay thing is like so far away, it's not even something you dealt with. It was to sort of confront them a little bit about how they really treat people, which I thought was really kind of interesting. It wasn't ever really for gay people, it was really for straight people.
What I think is like one of the biggest problems with Japanese media representation of queer people, I think, is that it mostly depicts gay men and transgender women, but at the same time not so much about lesbian people and trans men. I mean, there have been some what was it called? Kinpachi Sensei, the school drama series.
Yeah,
where I saw the season during junior high, I guess, and I was like, wow, it was about a trans boy, but I've never seen anything big like a financially, commercially successful TV series or movie about trans men. Or I don't even recall any watching or reading any content that was as commercially successful movie or TV series about lesbian people. And
there's been a couple of dramas, but they've been.
Yeah, I mean, there were some important works out there, but yeah, the general public mostly is not aware of them. And I also think that well, this is maybe me personally, but when I see contents, like media contents about gay people, like they are mostly about gay couples, not about single people who are gay or lesbian or anything. So like that's probably why I don't feel reflected in the media representation of queerness. I just broke up with my boyfriend, so. That's not
and that's why we're all here today. We are here to find Masaki a new life partner.
Yeah.
No, but
my phone number. This is my phone number. Yeah.
I really hear what you're saying, Masaki, that when they do depict non-traditional relationships and people on television, it normally is a cisgender gay couple, because that just happens to be the majority of what the controlling group of people who run the entertainment industry think is maybe easy to digest, or that's what the public wants to see. And it is disgusting how underrepresented the multiple
also,
groups are.
Yeah, I guess it also speaks about like how straight men see gay men in terms of like if your gay friend is taken or if they have a partner, they are not a threat,
Uh-huh.
right? So like, I think I mean like seriously, like whenever I see any gay character, male gay character in manga or movies, if he is single, then he's a threat.
Yeah, he's overly sexualizing everything,
Right.
and he's dangerous.
Or
Yeah.
Exactly.
you know, the
Or a very good friend of a female character
right,
who doesn't like cause any trouble.
right.
Yeah, in that sense, under sexualized. Doesn't
Yeah.
have his own desire.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I want to see some gay character who like never gives up on like trying to have sex with the straight character like until like the very end of the series.
Problematic storylines.
There are people like that.
There are absolutely people like that, but
I used to be one.
maybe that's not the best one to show. Oh my gosh. So these are things that maybe Japan is getting wrong, but in your opinion, I would love to hear about what you think Japan is getting right when it comes to the LGBTQIA plus community. What are some things that Japan is doing or not doing that are different from other countries that you think, oh, Japan has it right this time? Like, do you have any opinions on that kind of idea? How about Wasabi-chan? What do you think? Ah, mic ga. Mada. You can fix your mic and I'll go to another speaker. Take your time, no problem. Ronald, how do you feel about that?
Well, something that happened relatively recently, which would be the end of June, is that the singer Utada Hikaru came out as non-binary on Instagram live stream. And it was because a few days earlier, she had made this big thing about, on social media, she made this big post about how she was just talking, how they were talking about how they didn't like how, because they live in London now, they didn't like how they were supposed to be titled as like Miss or Mrs. And that they didn't like how, I guess, like introductory gender titles. They didn't like gender titles. So then like about a week and a half later, they came out as non-binary. And it was very like surprising, but then not in a way, because it was kind of like, if you had followed their career, you kind of saw hints and clues. But one thing was that one of the morning news shows the following, because it happened on Saturday, and on Monday, one of the morning news shows, I believe it was Tsukiri, they actually had this like story about it. They had this big chart and they were explaining exactly like what is gay, lesbian, transgender, non-binary, and like everything, all these different like sexual and gender identities. And it was just like, oh, they actually are like talking about this and trying to explain to the public what these things are. That was interesting. That was like,
I think that was really cool. And it's very, very Japanese news, isn't it? Like whenever there's a new topic that comes out, they really do like to bring out those boards and peel off the tape and explain to you in very, very basic ways so that everyone, no matter what your education level is, you can kind of understand what the topic is and kind of just spoon feeding the information so everyone gets it. And I think if it were done in America, they would just say the term, move on, and maybe not explain it as deeply. They would expect you to be proactive and go to Google and search for it yourself. But because a lot of Japanese news is very reactive, they tend to teach you a bit more. And I think that was a really good point. Have you ever, well, maybe you haven't because you don't live in Japan, but sometimes there are posters in schools as well next to the hokenshitsu saying like, oh, do you know about these new, not new, but these recently becoming popular in the media identities? And there are posters like that all around the place. So that's kind of a nice thing where they explain things. It might feel like too much, but maybe to someone outside the community, it's just enough. Sorry, Masaki, you had your hand raised. Go for it.
Thank you. I want to start by start with something that Japan didn't get it right. but
Okay.
yeah, something that it's I want to talk about this because
Go for it.
the opening ceremony of the Olympic Games, a singer, very famous, very talented, wearing a rainbow-colored dress, singing the national anthem in front of the national flag with like a B-roll of the face of the emperor. I'm like,
Hmm. What's
I'm
happening?
not gonna be co-opted like that. um, the singer she did make an appearance on the very popular end of the year music TV program back in 2019, and she also had the rainbow colors were everywhere on the stage, and she had drag queens dancing behind her, and it was awesome. The performance was great, but at the same time, the whole program was themed. Um, um, the whole theme of the program was the Olympics, Tokyo Olympics, and like so like we were like, a lot of people, like not the majority of queer people, but a small fraction of the queer community felt very uncomfortable with that because like some of them, like some of us are not Japanese, some of us are Zainichi Koreans, the Korean residents in Japan who have been living in Japan, um, uh, whose ancestors came to Japan during the wartime and after the wartime. Who do not enjoy the same rights as the Japanese nationals, right? And some of us are newcomers, like new immigrants, right? So a lot of us felt very uncomfortable, and I was like, "Oh, Misha, you're good, but," and then this opening ceremony of the Olympic Games, I'm like, "No, you're not an ally anymore."
It
I
has
mean,
been decided.
yeah, like I don't have
Okay.
anything against, like personally against her, but I mean, okay, so I'm not gonna expect anything good from you. But so, um, huh? Did anyone say anything?
No.
They decided they were specifically going to talk about something that Japan was getting wrong.
Yeah, but yeah, so I'm gonna move on to something positive. I think um, the coverage of gender reassignment surgery has been it's covered by national healthcare, and at the same time there is a negative to it. The hormone therapy is not covered, and when you're getting both treatments, hormone and the gender reassignment surgery, then nothing is covered. So it's still in the progress. We're still in the process of getting everything covered, but yeah, the surgery itself is now covered. So I guess with um, transgender people who want to transition physically and also legally, like fully to the gender that they identify as, I think the laws are. Um, I think we are looking at a not pretty good, but I think it's going the right direction.
Cool. Thank you, Masaki.
Mhm.
How about yourself, Wasabi-chan? マイクは大丈夫ですかね?
I guess it's not.
はい、まだまだダメです。
Yeah.
No problem. Erica, what do you think about Japan that they're getting right compared to America or maybe local governments in New Jersey?
Well, so again, I'm going to talk from an otaku lens, which is to say, one of the things that I'm seeing a lot more of and a lot more promotion of is queer manga and media, fantasy media, even if it's not necessarily a fantasy story, that includes a lot of more openly queer themes. So again, I just brought a whole bunch of stuff. So I have like Our Dreams at Dusk, Shimanami Tasugari. I brought the English language ones for the overseas people, so you can see this in English. And there's a two-part here. So Kamatani Sensei is Gender X and wrote this incredible, fabulous fiction about LGBTQ people in Japan, living in Japan with a lot of really good real life issues and dealing with, people being jerks. There's a lot more comic essays and a lot of more manga stuff. And I don't want to say a lot, but more manga are starting to come out, particularly things like Twitter and Pixiv, where they can develop their fan base. So Nagata Sensei came out very low key in her first My Lived Experience with Loneliness, and in her newest one, she's dealing with how she feels about her gender and her gender presentation and her sexuality, and even sort of isekai fantasy. Inori Sensei has a series called On the Love of the Villainous, where there are a lot. There's in the first volume, one of the characters in this fantasy otome game world turns to the other one and says, "Are you what they call gay?" And then the conversation happens, and that's in the first volume. And then the story actually gets queerer as the story goes on. There's openly trans characters, and there's openly gay characters, and the issues of the society in this feudal fantasy game not dealing with like gay marriage. I mean, there's some real world commentary about Japanese society and dealt with through the lens of looking at it through this fantasy game. And Nori Sensei really makes a point of saying, well, because the character was Japanese and she died and woke up in her favorite otome game. If you know isekai fantasy stuff right now, that's the thing. You work at a black company and you do much too overtime. You die, you wake up in your favorite fantasy game, and then you're in a novel. So that's the story here. But what she does is she really takes the opportunity to really address serious issues in both Japanese society and how things can be addressed in this fantasy world that she's creating as she's going on. So here's the other thing. This is sort of the two-part. This is the second part. There's a manga called Boys Run the Riot, and it's by Gaku Kato Sensei, and he is a trans man, and he wrote the story about a trans boy. And it's a lovely story, and it's from Kodansha in Japan, and Kodansha in the US picked it up. Kodansha in the US picked it up, and they assigned an entirely trans localization team to it. The editor, the translator, the letterer, everybody who worked on it is also trans. Now, what I'm saying, the reason I'm pointing this out is because the American companies, the Western companies, the localization companies taking this stuff going, this is great, we want more because our audience wants more, will and does have a real world effect on the Japanese companies going, wow, this is selling really well. Why don't we get more of this? And there has already been a significant, in like the last 2 years, a massive increase in openly queer content. So comic essays, fantasy, isekai stuff, just straight up fiction, manga, and nonfiction. There's a new story it's called I Think My Son is Gay, or something that My Son is Gay, came out. It's another comic. It's a fiction, but it's about a real story. So what's happening is more of the publishers here are pushing for more of that, and that is actually changing the way content is being put out, media content in manga and in novels and light novels and in games in Japan. So I think
that's fantastic.
That effect is going to have a long tail.
So if anyone wants to pick up those titles, you can use Erica's discount code on Amazon.
Yes,
it's Queen of the Yuri.
So actually, almost all of these are listed on my store, Yuricon.com store. Absolutely go there. There's literally thousands of men in Japanese and English and literature and light novels and everything. So yes, absolutely.
Cool. Thank you so much. Ronald, how about yourself? What have you noticed in Japan that they're doing right compared to maybe where you're located in Jersey?
Oh, I spoke about the Utada thing that happened.
You answered this one first,
I was
Rest. Let's hop back
the first
to
person I went.
let's hop back to Wasabi-chan then to see if her mic is okay.
I
Wasabi-chan?
don't know. Like,
Yay,
I don't
we
know.
can hear you.
It works?
Perfect.
Yeah.
Wow, I haven't touched anything. Okay. Yeah, the
運
good
がいい
point.
か。
運がいいね。日本のいいところ、LGBTQ コミュニティ、
そうね。
Nowadays, I think like social medias, like you can find like so many different type of people, even not not non-LGBT people, like someone who has kind of I don't know how to explain. 日本語でも大丈夫？
全然平気。
なんかソーシャルメディアで例えばまさきさん言ってたけど例えばゲイの人はセレブリティでいっぱいいるでしょ。テレビでもよく見るし。でもトランスジェンダーの人、F2M の人はあんまり見ないじゃない。F2M の人は見るけど見ないわね。No, sorry. M2F と F2M がIt's complicated. Okay.
日本語でも難しいね。
日本語でも難しい。Anyway, like it's so easy to find like someone like you ね。なんか自分と同じような人をインターネットを使ってソーシャルメディア TikTok とか Instagram を使ってすぐ発見できる。それがすごくいいところだなと思って。で日本の LGBTQ のコミュニティの人たちがもっと積極的にそういうソーシャルメディアを通して発信しているからすごく素敵だと思う。そこがすごくいいところだと思います。
Yeah, the fact that a lot of people, yes, thank you. A lot of people who are putting themselves out there on social media because they come from a non-gender conforming background or maybe just a general queer background, the fact that they are putting themselves out there, as we've mentioned before on the internet, it makes them very easy to discover and you're able to see yourself being represented online. And that's a really, really nice thing because it's just, you're not alone. And that kind of feeling and just discovering that is just super, super sweet sometimes. Thank you, Wasabi-san. So I think we're running out of time. So I just want to throw one last question out to the group before we close up today. That last question is, because you are all so involved in media, right? You all have so much knowledge in different worlds. I would love to know what person in the queer community do you think deserves a little bit more attention? Someone who maybe is up and coming, someone who you have fallen in love with, someone who you really, really enjoy their content, but maybe they haven't popped yet. まだちょっとバズってない人がいれば、その人をちょっと紹介していただきたいと思いますので。Who would you like to drop in the queer spotlight today? Anyone?
It has to be Japanese. Japanese?
No. Anyone in the queer, in the world of queerness. Sure, go for it.
Me?
I know Erica's having a little bit of a tough time because she's narrowing it down from 1,500 different authors. So you take your time. You take your time. Ronald is going through his Spotify playlist of thousands and thousands of musicians.
Here's the issue, though.
Oh, is there an issue? It's a question, Ronald.
There's an issue, though. The issue is that you will see artists who will say certain things that are like pro-LGBT, or like if you didn't know, like if you're using like drag race gifs in your Instagram story and being like, yeah,
queer
and
baiting.
Everything. I don't really think it's queer baiting. I think it's more being gay, but not actually coming out for fear of your career being damaged.
So queer masking almost.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. So you want to stay away from someone like that?
Can you read the
I wouldn't say stay away. I think like I think they should still be supported, but it's just an issue of just like if you do, even if you have like enough rumors about you being, you can like have your career damaged. So it's kind of hard for me to like name somebody because I don't really want to like essentially out them, if that makes sense. because like you'll
just
see like
did a
everything.
video of queer mangaka and yuri mangaka, and I gotta tell you, the list is pretty small. Because while there's plenty of people I know, that's not the same thing as them being completely out.
Sure. Let's rephrase the question so that this can be entertaining for the audience.
Okay.
Please introduce a queer piece of media or something that inspired you, something that you felt seen in, and it doesn't have to be created by a queer person who says they're queer. Something that inspired you to be more yourself and you felt seen,
so
and you want to support them.
I'd like to talk about.
Go for it.
One of them was Gunjo by Nakamura Ching Sensei. She's brilliant. She is very out. She is very outspoken. And if you read Japanese, Gunjo, it's not in English yet, but you can always watch Ride or Die. And the other one, also not yet in English, but this, I'm saying this basically to pressure the manga companies here in the US, is Takamiya Jin Sensei. She also is openly lesbian. She's out. She puts in her Yuri manga, her characters are often openly queer and use lesbian slang, which I really like because it sort of ties the two communities together, the Yuri manga and the lesbian community. So, dear 7Cs, please license Omoi no Kakura. That's what that's
Yoroshiku onegaishimasu.
Yes, thank you very much.
From your mouth to Kami-sama's Mimi. All right, how about you, Wasabi-chan? What do you think?
Yes, I have do you see this? Kei-shan.
Yes.
Yes.
She's a Kei-shan. She's a transgender model, very young, but very talented, beautiful. I love her, and you need to follow her, I think.
Okay. Excellent.
Thank you. How about Ronald? Are you able to come up with an answer for us today?
So this is someone else who is on non-binary, but I remember like watching, because during the summer they have all these big music shows, and I remember just watching one particular performer, Kika Kiyoshi. They are an Inca singer primarily, but they do more like pop-oriented things. So last year or the year before, they actually like had this big, like they wrote this message basically where they came out as like non-binary, and it's been interesting to see their transformation from someone that would normally just like wear a suit and just sing like these traditional Inca songs to like actually like having more like androgynous, like long hair, like the hair is longer now, the lips are like a little bit plump, like they were like in a cat suit with like cutouts and like sequins and everything.
Yes, please.
Which was like interesting, and like the hair was blowing in the sea. Hair to like in the past where they were singing.
The evolution from a student fan. I like it. Okay. And that was just last month recently. Can you say the name one more time? Kika Kiyoshi. を皆さん消してください. Awesome. じゃあ、Masaki-chan, what do you think?
Okay, I guess my response to the question is divided into two parts. First, the media or website that has influenced my understanding of myself and also my self-acceptance greatly is the website called AVEN, the Asexual Visibility and Education Network. Because I've been having a lot of thought. I've been through a lot of thought process about my sexuality, and thanks to my followers on Twitter, my English Twitter account has so many great followers who are so supportive of my journey of like identity finding and also like navigating through all these social labels. And some of them have suggested all these concepts. And when I looked into those words and labels and like concepts, I often ended up on the website AVEN, the Asexuality Visibility and Education Network.
That's AVEN?
AVEN. I don't know if it's pronounced AVEN, but I don't know. But anyway, it's a community of asexual or aspectrum people um, who, of course, include like demisexual, phrasexual, semisexual, yeah, all sorts of things. And
Otokori sexual.
autocorrect I don't know if anyone's talking about that on that website yet, but it's a new term, I guess. But anyway, so it's a very good piece, good repository of information and communication among the asexual and aspectrum community. And there's not so much information about asexuality in Japanese. So and that's probably that's part of why well the fact that a lot of queer information, queer communication happens in English. That's part of why I do English lessons for queer people on YouTube and TikTok. So yeah, I would highly recommend checking out that website if you are, going through some kind of identity finding process. And moving on to the sort of like a shout outs to people who deserve more attention. Um, one of my friends is a YouTuber, and she also wrote a piece. She also contributed a writing to one of the latest transgender themed leaflets kind of thing by a famous trans activist, Mameta Endo. And he compiled many stories, narratives, and like life stories, and like all these. Um, I guess I guess the book also includes some art pieces. Um, and this friend of mine, Junjun, I don't know if you can see this, but no, yeah. Okay, Junjun, her Twitter ID is JUN 2017 626. I guess that's when she started using Twitter. But anyway, she is a very opinionated transgender woman who speaks about her experience, who speaks about um, um, her like journey of discovering herself, and like also like, because we didn't talk talk about the the situation, the current situation, the current like political climate for transgender women um, that we all aware of. That's being um, everywhere in the UK, in Japan, in Korea, and some parts of the US. I mean, not so much in the US, but um, and she doesn't really like um, engage in debates with people who are not supportive of transgender people, but she just creates narratives, creates videos, and like writings about herself and about her trans friends that are like so real to them. And I think it's the proliferation of life narratives of transgender people themselves. I think we need more of that. So if you're interested in um, learning about transgender people in Japan, I guess Junjun, she's an awesome creator. And also, I need to mention 性差別撤廃部会.
Mhm.
性差別撤廃 means like
Sexual
abolishing.
discrimination.
Yeah, like abolishing sexual discrimination. This group is part of the larger group of Zainichi Koreans and allies, and some of my friends, um, they belong to that larger organization, but they created a small group inside it um, to like, educate both the general public and people within the Zainichi Korean community. And I think it's important that even though we are talking about LGBT plus Japan today, we also need to learn and educate ourselves about the intersectionality of ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender identity, and stuff like that, everything, right? So if anyone in the audience is interested in learning about the intersection of um, ethnic discrimination in Japan and queer discrimination in Japan, I guess if you read Japanese, they publish booklets, maybe semi-annually. I'm not sure, but it's a great resource. So I highly recommend that.
Cool. Thank you. And you also touched on a really interesting topic, or not interesting, but extremely helpful. If you're ever thinking about being an ally or wanting to learn more or just understand what a different group is going through, the best thing I think to do is just to listen. And there's so many different places to listen. Instead of throwing your opinions out first, listening is a great way to start. So thank you to everyone who attended our talk today about the LGBTQ plus community and things regarding Japanese culture, because you, starting from a listening standpoint, is going to make things move in a better, more positive direction. I can only hope. So thank you everyone for joining us today. I'd like to say bye-bye, mata yoroshiku onegai shimasu, and just throw it back to Chris at Hyper Japan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bill. That was fantastic and really
はい、
interesting.
録画終わりました
for
み
us.
たい。
That was fantastic. Thank you very much for
The
sharing
on-air
that with us
button is
today.
off, right? We're good?
And yes, for
Yes.
more Japanese pop culture, traditional culture, and everything from Japan, please check out Hyper Japan online. There's a link in the chat or underneath this video, and we will endeavor to bring you more great Japanese contents. Thank you very much, everybody, and goodbye.